that introduction. I mean, I'll barely be able to stand up. Yeah, so Ruth and I go way back. We go back to, I think it's 1997, 98, when she presented a play, The Street. And I was delighted to receive it because it was an original play. And our theater in the Row was about 3 or 4 or 5 years old at that point in Vancouver. And here was a play that was hitting quite close to the bone about drugs and about the neighborhood, the East Side. But since then, I think the next production actually after that was Waiting for Godot by Samuel Beckett. And that's the playwright and author and novelist and poet that I'll talk about for a while. I'm also going to ask a very old associate and a wonderful writer who we produced a number of times, Patrick Foley, to read from Godot. And if we have enough time, we'll read from Endgame. Probably you've all heard of Waiting for Godot. It's when you talk about Beckett, I can't say that we're talking about the happiest guy on the planet. He's not sort of a Renoir or with flowery colors and women dancing through various different fields of flowers and so forth with wonderful sort of charming music. He's a very difficult and complicated writer. But there are some very marvelous pieces of his that are unforgettable. Waiting for Godot, the reason why I chose it is there is a magnetism within his writing that draws some people, not everybody, but it draws some people. It drew me. The writing is poetic, and you'll hear that when Pat and I read just an excerpt. We're just going to read an excerpt. And then today, Pat and I were going over Endgame, which is a very, it's not as long as Godot. Godot is 2 acts. Endgame is a longer play, almost as long. But when we were reading it, Pat was asking me a couple questions about text, and I was going, my God, Beckett is playing with words like crazy. He's playing with the word lying, laying, doggo, and you'll hear it also at times in Godot. So when you're directing the piece, it's best to really have your actors who want to sit down and analyze the script. In other words, they might say, well, what the hell is going on? And the big question is, who is Godot? Because in the play all the time they're saying, who are we waiting for? Godot, where is he? He's not here. So, and Pat asked a very simple question, and it's in a lot of the writings of his critics, saying, who is Godot? Where is Godot? Why doesn't Godot never appears in the script. This person or character or soul person or spirit never appears. So one might say, and Pat and I were talking again about that today, is that Godot could be seen as hope. When you get into Beckett and hope, you're going to chip away like crazy at hope. And I don't mean the town of Hope, which is probably almost in better shape than one hoping for hope, especially nowadays with what's going on. But in his play, you'll hear there's repetition. And in his writing, in his novels, there's just a constant repetition. Now, what in our lives can we connect to in relation to repetition? Day by day by day, hour by hour by hour, minute by minute. And it can be also the same thought. I've got to go to the bank. Have I paid a check? my mother-in-law, my father, my child, washing the dishes. The repetition of the daily life is, I think, something that very distinctly it hit Beckett. Just a background quickly as to who we're talking about. Okay, he was born in 1906 in Foxrock, Dublin, Ireland. So he's an Irish writer. He's quite distinguished in the sense that he eventually went to Paris and lived there and wrote in French and quite often translated his own plays into English. So he's an Irish writer in English, translates his plays into French, and then also translates them back into English. So Godot was translated by him into French, back into English, the same with Endgame, and a number of others' writings. Guess what this very distinguished, very sharp face, I don't know if any of you have seen his face, very sharp nose, almost rigid, sculpted out of rock, shock of hair. He eventually became the secretary and befriended James Joyce, who, and they worked on Finnegan's Wake, which was really one of the last novels of James Joyce. Now, if I were to say, who's read James Joyce here, and how many of you understand James Joyce, we might possibly get half a hand or no hand at all. James Joyce, the book is after Ulysses, I think, or somewhere in there. It's really his last works. And it's a complicated, very dense book, as well as are Beckett's novels, Malone. Here's a collection of, now we have Malloy, Malone Dies, and The Unnameable. So the letter M really attracted this guy. But trying to get through Malone Dies, before I in the last week or so, trying to get through it, there's barely a paragraph. It's just a solid bit of writing on each page. And so you have to take your time. I don't know, how many of you read Anna Karenina here, the Tolstoy? Yeah, the recent translation by Pever, I think that's how you say it, is very, very difficult in a way, but that too is dense. And I think, again, I think I showed the selection that if there's time, I wanted to read the connection between just an area of thought in Tolstoy's main character, Levin, who really, in a sense, is Tolstoy himself, and the connection with a great body of Beckett's work. Beckett almost says, let me die. So it's not a happy, we're walking, he's walking quite often on a tightrope. So just to give you an idea, in Malone Dies, very dark sort of character. Malone, it sort of opens, and on the second page, Malone says, then why rejoice now? I am content necessarily, but not to the point of clapping my hands. I was always content, knowing I would be repaid. There he is now, my old debtor. Shall I then fall on his neck? I shall not answer any more questions. I shall even try not to ask myself any more. While waiting, I shall tell myself stories if I can. They will not be the same kind of stories as hitherto. That is all. They will be neither beautiful nor ugly. They will be calm. There will be no ugliness or beauty or fever in them anymore. They will be almost lifeless, like the teller. What was that I said? It does not matter. I look forward to their giving me great satisfaction. Some satisfaction. I am satisfied there. I have enough.